Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, wherever you're watching from. If it's the morning, if it's the afternoon, if it's the evening, we really appreciate you joining us today in discussing the value of digital marketing and the evolving customer decision journey. My name is Mauricio Herrera. I am the Director of Partner Development here in the Americas. And I've decided to actually partner with Lisbeth and the Women of Flooring to show you that there is a ton of value in looking at digital marketing as a powerful tool and as an evolving tool, right? There's a couple things that we'll be discussing today that we want to really just make sure you know that you can arm yourself with as you start approaching the high season, as you start approaching planning for the second half, as you start thinking about next year, as you start thinking about the next 2 years. We're living in a world right now that's been sort of weird and wonky. It's sort of feels like we are in a new space and time that you almost have to throw out what you knew 5 years ago because COVID-19 has created different and unique conditions in which all businesses are starting to having to address and adapt to, right? So with that said, I want to introduce myself for just a second here so you know where this information is coming from. Like I mentioned, my name is Mauricio Herrera. I'm the director of partner development for the Americas for Microsoft. I've been at Microsoft for about 6 years, and some of the things that I hold true that I've been able to contribute to Microsoft and the businesses that we support are in digital transformation and representation. I'm a three-time Ad Color Awards juror. I've recently been awarded the Gold Club for this last fiscal year. And without going through the entirety of my background, I've been in digital for about 15 years in a couple of different aspects, startups, agencies, and digital transformation. I'm sort of jack of all trades, but I've really honed in my skills in helping small businesses and accelerating businesses continue to grow and separate themselves in the industry. Largely, I've been focusing that through enabling these businesses and partnerships through our Microsoft Ad Product Suite, primarily through the advertising side, right? I think that's a really good starting point for any business who wants to start really thinking themselves as a growing presence in their local marketplace and thinking of themselves as how they start separating themselves from folks who may not be doing digital at all, right? And so some of the segments that I've covered range from automotive, home services, and generalists anywhere from top to bottom. Think lawyers, think services as a software, think startups. So there isn't anything that I haven't had experience with, right? And so where I want to make sure that I can reassure and reinforce some confidence is here is that we are looking for partnerships that help us inform different industries that we may have overlooked and or have not played in before. And this is why we're here. So with that, I want to show you what we'll be talking about: creating customer value that leads to growth, digital acceleration, data disruption, and the new behaviors. So with that, I mentioned early on in our conversation that we are living in a new world, right? Largely in the last 2.5 years, we are evolving in a space that largely is a hybrid of some folks working largely at home and some continuing to go out in the field. And for small businesses, you have to adapt for both environments. You have to evolve for both kind of audiences, right? And through those audiences, we're finding some more nuances. But one thing I wanted to call out is that in the last 2 years, last year actually, we found that Americans and globally, more people are spending time at home, right? There was a forced lockdown, and as we started to come out of that, we started to see that people were and organizations were starting to, create more of a hybrid situation where people could come back to work, go into stores. There was limited capacity or some restrictions placed, but people are starting to exercise some of those things. But one thing that is starting to stay true and consistent is that we are staying really focused on digital, right? And we're focused on our laptops. We're still focused on staying connected. So with that, there's 4 trillion minutes now that we've seen people have spent more on their desktop and on their connected devices than they did in the past. That's an insane number, right? And largely, we're spending more of that time in front of a device that's giving us more of a rich experience to do our work, to do our research, to do our entertainment, and to kind of serve as a connection point to the rest of the world. And so I fall within that group where as soon as we were told that we had to go home because of the COVID-19 surge, everybody basically turned their home into an office, and the office became everything, right? And so for me, I live in New York City. I don't have much space to play with, right? And so largely the west wing of my home became the couch, and that west wing was also my office. It was also my break room. It was also my comfort space where I would decompress. And so more times than not, I had my business machine at home. I had my business machine with me 24 hours a day. And, in the past, when I was leaving work, I was leaving my machine at work and I was going home. I was decompressing on the train and I was thinking about what I was possibly going to do that weekend, what I was going to do that evening. And once I got reception, I would log in through my phone and kind of navigate through that space. Now, what we're seeing is that people are largely working through one or two machines. We are a massively connected society. I think in the past, when we did have that break from work and home, at home there was about three devices that everyone had. It was a tablet, it was a smartphone, and it was a PC. Probably one that was shared between uh, kids and parents, but it largely lay dormant. Maybe sometimes active during the evenings and at night, or for homework and things like that, right? But it was largely a dormant device. Now that folks had to largely work from home and there's a massive audience that is going to continue to stay that way, they were forced to bring in a new device, and that work device is a work device, right? And more times than not, when we are seeing business machines shake out, they're PCs. And so we found that with that, we learned a lot more from our core product, which is Windows 10, Windows 11, and we found that a lot of people are doing a lot of their personal and their work research at during the same times now. And so the mix of personal life and work life is starting to blend here. If you look at the Venn diagram, I mean, obviously there's a window machine in the middle, but we are finding that when people are taking a moment for themselves in the middle of their day, they're probably researching what they're going to do that weekend on the same machine that they're doing most of their work on. And so we started to see a massive blend there. And really, when it comes down to what kind of things that they were searching for in terms of what they were looking at, we are starting to see a massive blend of maybe short term mixed in with more long term type of goals. And so the long term type of goals that require a lot more research are thinking about getting a new car, right? Thinking about updating their home, thinking about maybe a vacation down the road. But they became largely indexing higher on what we would consider some higher consideration type of products. And so in that, we started to see that behaviors were starting to change. We're starting to see that people were investing more on wanting to improve themselves, wanting to improve their home experiences, their work experiences, and life experiences, right? Now they had the time to sit and look at what would normally take probably 3 months to consider, or 6 months in some cases, shortened down to maybe about a month, because for the most part, we weren't going anywhere. Some things were not open, and it forced us to sort of sit there and face maybe some truths that we probably didn't want to face in, for a long time. Things that we typically tend to put off for a while, we had to face them. I mean, I'm one of those people that went through one of those experiences. I realized I didn't like my couch. I realized I didn't like my devices that I had at home. In terms of my home entertainment system, my home entertainment setup, it was just sort of, I had to face that. And I was one of those people that typically put things off, and I couldn't anymore, right? Because I was working and I was staring off into what was a situation that I needed to upgrade, right? And so these are one of the things too that as Microsoft, we started to ask ourselves, how are people behaving and how are we providing a good experience for these people to get what they want in the format that they want and in a way that's going to speak to them? And how do we work with our advertisers to deliver that type of message? So it really called for several of our heads to start thinking about how do we work with our partners in a new and unique way, right? So we wanted to make sure that when we do work with our advertisers, that they are armed with the best tools to provide the best in class opportunities to their advertisers, to their target audiences, so that we stay on top of how to keep their business afloat, how to keep their business successful. And we partnered in different ways. It was less transactional. It became more collaborative. And, in this respect, we learned a lot from what the advertisers were looking to do, right? They want more phone calls. They want more form fills. They want people to come in and experience what their showroom has to offer. They want to make sure that they're visible during every touch point of this person's life, right? So if I'm searching for this new couch, as an advertiser, you want to make sure that you want to get in front of me as much as possible. So where could they place their advertisements? Where could they place this type of message so that it's visible to me when I'm at the point of consideration, when I'm at the point of considering purchase, when I'm at the point of considering brands, when I'm at the point of considering which showroom. And lastly, when I'm at the point of making a decision, where am I going to schedule this in-person visit? Where am I going to schedule this in-person commitment to go make this final purchase? So there's a lot there that we learned, and a lot of that would not have happened if we weren't put in the situation where we had to basically work with our partners to understand what's going to keep them successful and how do we enable that. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we're reaching audiences across the work and life. So I will be throwing a couple of figures out at you folks who are listening. So if you want to pause and take some notes, obviously you are free to do that because this is pre-recorded. But I wanted to make sure that we can really drive home the point on being visible wherever your search audience is researching, where they are navigating, where they are conducting most of their personal and business. So for all intents and purposes, I am honing this conversation through the Microsoft advertising lens, but I will talk about other publishing entities that contribute to this search to get people down to the point of consideration, right? Because the idea is we want to make sure that we are informing a full digital marketing strategy. Full stop. We want to make sure that you understand that if you are advertising on Google, that's not the only search engine in town. Yes, you should be there, but you are missing out on another audience that is, again, growing because we are finding that as people are committing to hybrid workstations or working fully remote, 3 out of 4 machines are PCs. 3 out of 4 work machines are PCs, and they're powered by Windows. And Windows as a search as a operating system has search built into it, and that search is powered by Microsoft Ads by Bing. And so when that audience is searching, you want to make sure that you're visible. If they're not going to google.com and they're searching for you on Bing, then you're not present. Your competition is going to eat your lunch, right? That's sort of a very basic high level view of what we're trying to communicate here, is that you need to be present where people are searching. So that said, some of our core properties here are not just Microsoft Bing.com, right? It's Microsoft News, it's Outlook.com, it's the Edge browser. And here we're starting to see that people are starting to leverage these properties a lot more. With Windows 10, Windows 11, we made sure to bake in some really cool features that get you the information that you need faster and at your fingertips. With Windows 11, we have a Microsoft News button. All you have to do is just either hover it or click on it, and what pops up is the news feed. What's important to you? What do you want to know? What do what's important to you as soon as you are having your first cup of coffee in the morning? And we're finding that people are leveraging a lot more because it's just easier if you're hovering over a button rather than going to a start menu, finding your favorite browser, waiting for that to load, entering in your favorite website, yahoo.com, msn.com, huffingtonpost.com, whatever it is, and waiting for that to load, right? Why not just get quick snippets of what you're looking for? And we work with a lot of those websites anyway. So you're getting a lot of that information consolidated at one point. 48% of growth was on Outlook.com. Outlook.com is a free web browser, a free email client that we are offering. It's great. It sort of works just like Gmail, and people are adopting that. And that's becoming an opportunity for us to start looking at that as a viable opportunity for more advertising eyeballs. The Edge browser We are killing Internet Explorer. Sorry, folks, if you're still using it, we recognize, we heard the industry, we heard the people, and we're moving away from that, right? We found that there's a much better experience that we can offer, and they decided to commit to a new browser called the Edge browser. It's sexier, it's cooler, it's faster, and it's the icon on the top right. If you look at that, it looks just really fresh and clean, right? And what that does, as soon as you click on it, open it up, it gives you a tile view of your organization if you are part of a larger organization that adopts more of Microsoft product suites. But if you're not, you click on it, it gives you a tile view of just the news of the MSN.com experience. And so it gives it to you at your fingertips. You're already connected. You open it up and it gives you something that's really rich there. And again, we're finding that that's another opportunity for us to include some advertising, and it's another set of eyeballs that you can get in front of, right? So you're having to look at our set of product suites as something where we're not just one place. We're not a one trick, sort of shop anymore. We are evolving and we're learning. And a lot of this came from the insights from the folks that we've worked with in the past and we're continuing to work with, right? We're listening to our audience, we're listening to the advertisers, and we're listening to the industry as well. As we become way more connected, you're going to have to consider the television. You're going to have to consider being on a tablet, on a smartphone, on an audio device, on all these PCs, on the browsers, just to make sure that you're visible so that you're driving folks to take the action you want them to take, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that there are more interactions with connected devices now that you need to consider. Full stop. It is no longer the days of just going to a google.com or bing.com and searching for what you're looking for. If you're looking to buy some tickets for the movies, easy. You already know it's sort of a straightforward kind of interaction. But when you're looking at something that's going to take a little bit more consideration, you need something more of a rich experience. You're not going to look for new flooring or tiles or a new couch on your phone and make the commitment there. You might start it there because you know the brand, or maybe you were driving past a particular shop in your town that does some pretty good offline advertising. And you said to yourself, okay, I'm driving right now, but when I get home, I'm going to search this. So maybe on the next red light, you pull up your favorite browser, you type in what you just saw, and then you let it sort of sit there. But that's one point of consideration, right? So when they get home, typically, that's when a richer experience is more important. It requires you to pull up your machine, your web browsers on your work laptop or on your personal laptop, and you can really start getting a full breadth of what it has to offer. There's descriptions, there's pictures, there's things you can hover over. And in some instances where you have some advertisers that are committed to net new technologies, they may even have an artificial or a augmented reality component that lets you try some of that stuff in your home without ever having to have something physically in your home. Where IKEA, I believe, was doing this a couple years ago, where they adopted a strategy that allowed you to sort of see what this net new couch would look like in your home if you just went to the app, signed in, selected the item, and with your phone you can just hover over the space and it would sort of place it there in an augmented reality space, right? So that was couple of years ago. It felt like it was revolutionary at the time and maybe too far ahead, but we're at the space now where some people won't go into a brick and mortar. Some people won't go into a retail shop because there's some legitimate fears there and some concerns. And, if they have the buying power, they have the intent, maybe you should start considering what else is out there and asking some of the publishers like Google, like Microsoft, like Facebook, what else do you offer so that I can get in front of a potential audience that I may not be getting in front of? So that said, we want to make sure that as a publisher, as a space to advertise, we want to hold a couple things true. That we want to make sure that you're getting in front of the right audience, there's a relevant reach, that there's an intelligent experience, that it's really targeted when you are looking at and identified what your target audience looks like. We want you to have those bells and whistles, those dials to get in front of those folks, and a trusted and open digital platform, right? We want to make sure that you have all the information you know and need to understand how we're targeting these folks and how we're getting in front of them. If you are one of these businesses that has an existing database and they are, qualified in your space, you own the data, we have ways where you can plug into our platform and you can leverage what you have with our targeting and that much more powerful and more of a rich experience. So with that, this is the moment where we start talking about what differentiates Microsoft from Google, from Facebook, and from some of those other guys. Privacy and personalization. We are a trusted and open digital platform. Our core principle as a company is to stay out of court, really, because we want to make sure that people are taking their data and leveraging it as they want to because they own it, not because we have access to it. We are a tool that enables you to do more. We are not here to take what you own, what you have, what you've built, and leverage that to inform our systems to do other things later on. So in that is a big, big differentiator when it comes to this industry and who we are as a player. So to double down on a little bit more of what makes this important for us, first party data will be critical to customer relationships. As a company who's been around for quite some time, recognize that there are some things that can get a bit creepy, right? When it comes to dialing in onto specific audiences. So we want to be super careful that when we are leveraging our data, we're leveraging our signals that show intent, that we can show that there are things that from a sort of customer decision journey, people are showing signals of interest. And we want to make sure that they are not too identifying to get to that one person in that one location in that one zip code. That's a bit scary. Some of the other publishers may allow you to do that, but we don't, right? We want to make sure that we give you enough to get in front of a larger demographic, a bit more of a targeted base, and some folks that may fall maybe just on that edging point of that audience side, right? This way you have a little bit more of a breadth of of a group that you're targeting. If you have your own data, you, like I mentioned earlier, you can plug into that and you basically can leverage what you have on top of what we have to target more of that audience. So that said, this is largely to show you how we help target and how we keep things anonymous, how we do not take first party data. We leverage our own first party data to help get in front of those audiences on our properties, but that's it. We don't do anything else outside of that. Now, what are some of our own properties? Right. As I mentioned before, we are using what is within our wheelhouse. How are people self-identifying? LinkedIn is a good audience there for us that has already self-qualified, they self-identified. And on our platform, Microsoft Advertising, you can target against an industry, you can target against a company, you can target against a certain role type. You can also, as a core platform, target against location, target against uh, age demographic. You can target against sex. So we want to make sure that you have a couple of dials here that allow you to get in front of the right audience. This way, you're not erroneously spending on audiences that don't make sense to you, that aren't your target demographic, and that are also big enough that again, you continue to not just be so specific that no one's going to your site, right? So there are a lot of things here at play. And we're an evolving platform. So we're constantly learning, we're constantly understanding like what is going to keep us sort of competitive and who else do we partner with to open up a little bit more of the breadth to learn on how people are behaving without getting too specific. So going back to where it's important for us to deliver a right kind of message to the right kind of audience, we're realizing that as people begin to continue to do their research, continue to consider what is going to give them what they're looking for, a richer experience, something a little bit more robust, right? Again, going back to that path of consideration for the person who's looking at updating their home, maybe updating their look and feel, someone who's considering a larger sort of purchase, they want to look at brand and they're going to consider a brand that is going to speak to them, right? And so, in some very basic respect, how can you provide an option that maybe is not a one size fit all, right? Like we want to provide an option for folks during COVID, and this is a perfect time to highlight how some of the big shops like a Target, like a Walmart, had to adapt to some of these things, right? Because we couldn't go or allow, it didn't make sense to allow a ton of folks to be inside of their brick and mortar. And they were sitting on a ton of merchandise. They were sitting on a ton of inventory and things. And they realized they needed to over index and leverage a lot more of their digital presence. So, from a very basic top line point, they said, how do we become, as a brick and mortar, wherever my location is, a fulfillment center? How to create an option for folks who may be too scared or maybe just not really wanting to take the option or exercise the option of coming in to still buy from us and still, know that we are seeing them, we're addressing them. How do we allow them to buy online and pick up in store or pick up from a designated space from our parking lot, right? And so when they start thinking about that holistically, right? I mean, that was a conversation that we know that the big brands had with their advertisers, with their advertising publishers. And we found that, if you're creating options for folks and you're addressing the needs for different audiences, you're going to create a lot more loyalty. You're going to create a lot more sort of visibility there for people that maybe you didn't think about before in the past because we didn't have a situation like this. Microsoft is really huge in providing experiences for people in segments that we probably didn't consider 30 or 40 years ago, right? I think in the general excitement of connectivity, we worked with PCs, we manufacturers, we worked with folks to plug in, and over time we started to ask ourselves, what other audiences are we not addressing or allowing to have to participate as part of this experience, right? And so when you start thinking about how we work with the connected devices for audio, those kind of things, the connected audio device now allows people who um, may be vision impaired, right? Now they can engage with our search engine. That's an experience there that creates another access point for an audience that we may have overlooked. Now we're bringing them into the fold. They are participating now. How do we make our gaming controls for Xbox more accessible for people who may be a bit impaired with their own motor functions or their mobility? How do we start engaging them because they should have the same experience and access to some of these things? So we had already been thinking about some of these things, and we found that, again, when you start integrating and creating, experiences that include other people's needs, other people's conditions, other people's situations, you're going to create a little bit more loyalty there, and you're going to create a little bit more trust, and you get a new fan. And that fan for us is a fan for life, and we want to continue to win them. If you win that fan for life, then they will advocate for you. They will be the best marketing tool that you will have. So when you're thinking about your product, think about the full top to bottom experience. How did they click on your ad? Did you provide an option for them that allows them to be seen? Did you provide an option for them to test your product or look at your product in a way that maybe accommodates them a little bit better, right? And at the very end of the experience, how was that, right? What was the last touch point? How do you leave that experience? Because yes, you got them through the door. Yes, they feel seen, but also, how was that last thank you? How was that last sort of component of recognizing them as a valued customer? And how can you show that you can appreciate them a little bit more if they do a little bit more marketing, sort of word of mouth for you to their neighbors, to their friends, to people within their community who are considering something similar to you? And that loyalty sort of doubles down because you are seeing them, they saw you, and if they had a good experience, they're largely going to advocate for you. Now, one of the things that I touched on about being seen and largely interacting with more of devices or spaces that you may have not considered in the past, users learn about a brand or product through TV ads or searching online, right? So we're saying now you need to consider a massive mix of your presence, right? Like no longer are there sort of silver bullets anymore. There are several components that are going to contribute to the success of you being present. So as mentioned, ads on TV, right? Terrestrial radio and television are still powerful, but we're finding that people are opting for more connected devices, and now connected TVs are huge, and they're becoming cheaper, and people are buying them, and they're also, subscribing to a lot more networks like a Hulu.com. Or companies like Roku who are working with like a Crackle or other kind of networks that are online and streaming exclusive. You can't find them on regular terrestrial television or cable networks. Those are creating more opportunities for you to be visible there. So when people are winding down from 6 to 9 and they just sort of want to catch some of their shows, as they, just sort of relax and not think about work, there's some places there where you need to be present because they're probably still in that consideration phase for that new car, for that new flooring experience, for that new couch, right? So these are those things there that you need to consider. Search engine is still very, very powerful. In fact, it is in some studies going to be more important than the television and radio because that's where most people are starting to search, right? That's where they're beginning everything there in the search engine. Again, why? Because the tablet, the phone, the laptop is 9 times out of 10 a little bit more present than the television. And during the middle of the day, they're likely on one of these devices rather than the television. So, these are numbers that we're going to start to see change dramatically within the next 6 months. And I would say in the year, we're going to see a little bit more of this ebb and flow because of where we are now. And so search engine's still very important. Word of mouth, like I mentioned, recommendations are massive, massive, massive. They're huge. And again, right, one of these things you have to consider is that just because it was a big purchase doesn't mean it's the last purchase. And again, if it's a big purchase, it could be something that, again, could be just them dipping their toes with a particular brand, with a particular organization or franchise. And if it was great experience top to bottom, then that might be something where they may consider it for their second home or for their second experience, or when their neighbor who just moved into the neighborhood is asking for recommendations, who did they have a great experience with? You might be the first person top of mind because you had that great experience from top to bottom when they started it all. And again, like I said, that kind of loyalty bleeds into recommendation. So again, things to consider as you start thinking about your brand and your digital marketing strategy. It's changing, and you just have to be top of mind for that consideration audience. And a lot of that's going to take part in being active in how you talk to the agencies you work with. If you manage your own accounts and campaigns and digital advertising, then that's more of a reason for you to engage with the publishing audience that you are engaged with. So if you're working with a Yelp, if you're working with a Google, with a Facebook, with a Microsoft Ads, call them. You need to make sure that you ask them what else is new, what else is out there, because I need to be in front of where they are searching. So that said, I wanted to highlight a little bit about the customer decision journey. They're changing. I mentioned this earlier on into my presentation, but again, this is just sort of a visual component of how people consider and end up purchasing. It may not have so many twists and turns depending on your industry. Like I said, if you're buying or considering movie tickets, that is a quick one. That's quick, right? That's something that you can do over the telephone. But when you're in an industry that requires a little bit more consideration, you need a richer experience. You need to be present in a couple of different touch points. Here, I have something on flooring. Imagine again, it might just start on someone driving home. They see an advertising, a billboard, they see a name brand. Great. They're going to consider it. It's going to be top of mind, but they're not going to convert right away. They're going to start their search on the general theme, maybe with a name, maybe with a brand, or a color, or a type of product that is within the ecosystem, and they're going to search for it. They're going to search for it where they start, either Google or Bing, and that's where they're going to start doing their research. Again, in the past, when we lived in a pre-COVID world, some of this decision journey could have taken 6 months, right? Because sometimes seasonally things just don't make the right sense. Sometimes it just isn't the right time and space, but you can always put it on for next week. You can always put it on for next weekend. And again, right, it's a little bit more of a lengthy space. But now that you have an audience that is either hybrid or fully remote, they got nothing but time. They got nothing but time in between what they're doing at work or in between dinner or in between, turning on the television. They're going to do a little bit more deep and richer research, and it's going to shorten. We've seen these customer decisions journeys shortened. For automotive, they used to be 90 days. That was the ideal. Now it's down to 30 days. And in fact, it's gotten to the point now where you have automotive dealers who don't have any inventory. They don't have any inventory for about a year because they're so backed up. As people knew that they were walking in, they knew exactly what they were looking for because they had the time to research. They didn't have to maybe consider, are they, do they value fuel economy over safety? Is there a particular brand that maybe speaks to them? No, a lot of people were like, you know what? I have the time to consider exactly what I'm looking for. I have a growing family. Safety is super important. I need to make sure that I also get a good mileage because we're going to be spending a lot more time in that space. Boom, that's exactly what they're looking for. Other folks said, you know what? Now's the time for a pivot in my career. And maybe I just want to take some time off and I want something that's really great on fuel economy and it's just a little spacious because I want to do some camping out. Or there are some people who said they wanted to consider a supplemental income and drive Lyft or drive Uber. And they knew that they needed something that was going to get folks from point A to B. It's a workhorse and it's great on fuel mileage and maybe even a hybrid, right? So they had all these things to consider and they said, you know what, I know exactly what I'm doing and I know exactly what I'm looking for. And that's what I'm going for. When I'm looking at flooring, I know what color I'm looking for. I know what kind of material I'm looking for. I know that I have a growing family, so I need something that's going to be resistant, and I want something that's going to look great because I'm in here for the long haul. Those are things there that they're walking into these showrooms, they're walking into these places exactly knowing what they're looking for. The difficult part is how do you envision that in your own home? So there's some things we've solved for and we're looking to solve for. Here we're solving for being present where they're looking. Again, being present on a visual component. So an MSN.com, a Facebook.com, a Google.com, YouTube. And then when you're looking at how they engage with price comparison, right? They may have the color down. You need to be present where they can purchase, right? And so we have at Microsoft Ads have a shopping component and a tab that allows you to even consider that. And we stack you up against other folks who are in the space. More times than not, people aren't taking advantage of the Microsoft shopping component. So you might be the only game in town. And I would say in your city, that's something to consider. Google is a great place to start advertising, but everyone is advertising on Google. So if you don't have the appetite to fight against some of the big brick and mortars or just don't have the same budgets and you need to think a little bit more strategically, you need to look at the other options where people are searching and where they have the spending power and the buying power. So again, these are just things for you to consider when people are looking to make some type of purchase and just being present across publisher, across network, and across the options that each one offers you. When we're talking about richer ad experiences, this is where you as an advertiser need to have that conversation with your publisher, with your agency, and ask them, what else can we do? What are we doing now? And what can we improve on? Because like I mentioned, we are starting to listen to our advertising and to the audiences. We're looking at some of our own properties as Microsoft and how do we turn those as a useful tool and create a space for people to get more visibility. On on the Microsoft side, a couple of things that I had touched on and that we're releasing, more bells and whistles, our shopping component. We're not just a core Bing.com, search what you're looking for, and then an ad comes up. No, now we're offering, if you are a retail shop, the opportunity to upload your inventory and we can actually see like what you offer. And you can offer images in that component. And if you're doing it on Google, it syncs exactly the same way. All you need to do is just talk to your Microsoft rep, your Google rep, and say like, how do we get placement on some of those things? Another component is just being visible. Something like visual is always compelling. So if you have great imagery and you want to highlight your products, we have places for you to highlight that stuff. We have an audience network that has signals for buying intent. You want to get in front of those folks. So, for us, we have a lot of learnings there, and we've also decided to start moving into the video space. So if you have video assets that you're leveraging for YouTube or or your connected television, you can actually leverage them on Microsoft now. So we want to make sure you know that these things are available. Multimedia ads. We're starting to leverage all the white space that we probably just kept whiteboarding for a long time. Like, what do we do with this? Let's create something highlight. Why don't you hover over something and give me the image? Give me the opportunity to play with a different ad format to highlight some of these things. So we are starting to get a little bit more creative and crafty with how we are playing with some of the different visual components on our core property and some of our newer properties. So all things considered, I want to make sure you guys know that there are different opportunities for you to highlight your goods and wares. All right. One of the things I wanted to dial into, because I've talked about this in the past, is flooring. Flooring on Microsoft advertising. Flooring falls within a larger ecosystem of home services for us. And in the last 2 years, we've just seen massive growth. There was a pre-COVID world, and then there's a COVID world that we're living in, and we're only continuing to see massive growth. One, we're seeing advertisers listen to us that are saying, like, we can't just be competitive in one place, and we can't just put all of our eggs in one basket. If you're advertising on Google, great, continue to do so. If it's working for you, awesome. But there's an audience that you are not reaching out to if you are only looking at one publisher as the place for you to get your phone calls, your leads, your traffic. If you're looking at yourself, if you're searching for yourself on Microsoft Ads, on Bing.com, and you're not seeing yourself come up, that's a problem, because that's an opportunity for your competition who's next door, across the street, across town, across city, across state even, to take advantage of that audience that's ready to buy. So I want you guys to also think about how you're considering where you're placing your investments, and where we're seeing growth and telling people that we are seeing more people search for this type of product and consider this type of product as part of the decision journey on our network. When it comes to home and construction growth, it's outpacing retail. People are planning to tackle more projects in 2022 with less hesitation for contracting outside help. It's insane. We're seeing people actually take on some of this project work themselves. Again, YouTube has become a great resource for people to perhaps Bob Vila their own situations. Again, they're spending more time at home. They're saying, why not do it myself? Now the companies like Home Depot and Lowe's are actually allowing you to rent out some of these heavier equipment that, typically you just left it up to the contractor and they would do it and take care of it, right? Now people are starting to take some of these things into their own hands, right? So that's an opportunity there to get in front of that audience that may be a little bit more cost conscious. Maybe they're a little bit more DIY. You want to continue to provide value for them in what they're looking for in the type of product. And, it's an opportunity for you to also sell your services to some of these folks if you want to make sure that it's done 100%, right. Maybe they don't have enough confidence in contractors and they don't know that they have other options. But we are seeing that folks are looking at refreshing a lot of their home in home improvement projects, right? And from a home buying perspective, we're seeing that in some growing cities, there isn't enough supply, right? And so people are putting their homes up for sale, and sometimes they're getting bids and offers sight unseen and cash. And, again, immediately they're going to go through a renovation period. So you want to make sure that you keep a good eye on what is happening in those markets, what's happening in some select cities where you're competitive in, and if you want to continue to grow and even invest in your company, right? As having a one or two more, vans or trucks in your fleet. These are things to consider, right? We're seeing growth, and you want to be part of that growth. When it comes to flooring, we're again going into what click volume looks like, just people clicking on the advertisements that make sense to them. These are numbers highlighting January 2021 up until August 2021. There's still growth there. I mean, it's huge. If you compare it against last year on the very left, it's almost light years ahead of like where we are, and that demand is continuing to grow. It's going to stay growing. Again, December is a slowdown month, but it quickly picks back up in January and on. When it comes to click-through rate and cost per click, we saw that cost per click actually went up because we saw more people participate in the auction. So again, people are listening to us. There are some places that your competition isn't. This is an opportunity for you to be there where they are not. If they are not paying attention to what other options exist. This is me telling you, you need to consider that. And now is your opportunity to strike while the iron is hot. On our network, we see cost per click much lower in some cities and in some zip codes and in some states, significantly lower than what you'd see on Google. And so if for a fraction of the cost you can dominate, why not do so? So this is something for you to consider. Again, talk to your agency, talk to your advertising rep, talk to someone here at Microsoft Advertising and ask them like, what can I do for my business in my select market in this particular product for this particular budget. I guarantee you're going to see how much more that's going to drive value to your business and growth. Again, a couple of different numbers here that slice and dice the data a little differently. The PC is highlighted because it's not going anywhere. I mentioned that during the COVID lockdown, and I guess I can't even consider it post because I guess maybe it's the vaccination period of our life. We are moving from a fully remote to hybrid situation. There's an audience there again that's continuing to grow, and the PC is largely staying stable, if not growing a little bit more, because it's become the primary device for folks to conduct all kinds of business, all kinds of leisure things. And again, it is still holding strong. It's, I mean, I'm going to round up. It's about 70%, and that's where most of the clicks were coming from when it came down to folks searching for flooring. And again, like I mentioned, when you're considering this type of purchase, this type of action, this type of product, you need something richer. A mobile phone is not going to cut it. A tablet is not going to cut it. So that being said, I want to make sure that we are highlighting where you continue to consider placement, how you place there, and where you stay competitive. So the Microsoft Ad Searcher, I want to talk a little bit about our demographic because I wouldn't be doing justice again without giving you these numbers, right? So as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, most of the clicks that were looking for flooring, about 70% of those clicks were coming from a PC. Microsoft Ads has a 37% part of the PC market share. So just over 1/3 of all searches on a PC are done on our network, Bing.com. So you need to be part of that. So if you are not looking at our network yet, you should, because you're not addressing 1/3 of the market. So that is 1/3 of the market that is ready to buy, right? So with that said, Microsoft Search Network has 47% of share of searches on Windows devices. So that's again going, people who have a Windows device, they toggle between Google and Bing as their primary search engine. We're nearly about as half of that. Windows users spend 72% more online than the average internet user. So that what we found is that our audience actually spends a little bit more online than the regular or average just internet user, right? So someone might just be searching or leveraging Google just to search things because that's just what they do. Like they're using it to translate things. They're using it to kind of look up something, right? As just a research tool. But when it comes to buying, people who are on Windows tend to spend and they spend more. So again, with that being said, our audience is one that is largely spending their time on a PC and they have buying power. When it comes to how we break out, this is the demographic. If you had an idea what we were, this is an updated version. 50% of people who search on our network are men and women, even split. Over half are under the age of 45. We're getting younger. So if you're the type of person that says, I tried this before in the past and I think we were just getting, elderly people, that's not true anymore. And if these numbers speak anything to you, you know, the remote audience, the hybrid work audience is largely people who are millennials at this point, Gen X. And again, we're starting to see more of Gen Z come into the workplace. They're going to work in a fully remote, at least for the foreseeable future space or hybrid space. And those machines that they're going to be leveraging are going to be PCs, likely powered by Windows, again, with a primary search component that is Bing. So we're only going to see this skew younger as we continue to move forward within the decade. In terms of the education piece, 33% have graduated from college of our network audience, and a third of the household incomes are have household income of 85K plus. So again, this just plays back into the previous slide of what we have seen to be true. Folks have the propensity to spend more when they're searching on Bing and on our network, and they have household incomes that exceed 85K plus. So, if your product requires a little bit more of a consideration phase and is on the pricey side, and it has the opportunity there to create a little bit more of a cash flow for your product or for your business, this is absolutely a place where you want to make sure you're visible. In terms of the partners and what our network looks like, this is the full transparency side of it all, right? We show you what's under the hood. We're not only just Bing, we're Microsoft Edge, we're Windows, we're Skype, we're MSN, we're Cortana, we're Outlook.com. Our partners, again, as we're going to continue to grow, and as we have continued to grow, are household names like Yahoo and AOL. They are still around and they're very competitive. And again, they have very loyal audiences that we want to participate because they speak to the same value of transparency and collaboration. Some of our other search partners, you may have heard of them: DuckDuckGo, CBS Interactive, The Wall Street Journal, WebMD, Ecosia. And again, that's continuing to grow as we continue to work with other partners that have pockets of loyal and qualified audiences that stay true to them. And we want to make sure that we're present, empowering those searches for them. Now, as we begin to enter the last few minutes of my presentation, I want to thank you all for checking us out, for signing up for this, for listening to me, and providing a little bit more insight on how you should be pushing your agencies, your search partners, your publishers, and really thinking about how you take your digital marketing into the next year, into the next 2 years, into the next 5 years, and really start thinking about this as something that's a little bit more it's a living component that requires you to start looking at every part of your investment and the digital marketing channels that you're investing in, and look at them with a fine-tooth comb. And how do you dial things up? How do you dial things down? Where are you advertising? What's working for you? What isn't? And also ask yourself, like, where else can I be where someone is searching? Because it's only going to continue to grow. We're entering a new phase of just technological development that is exciting, and it's moving at a faster pace. So with that, I'm going to leave you all with 5 takeaways, 5 things you must remember as I leave you on this journey here of our intro webinar, because I want to make sure that we can host more, we can collaborate a little bit more, and really continue to provide a series that speaks to your business. The 5 things you must remember, and I would give this to anyone in any business, SMB, franchise, you name it, top to bottom. 1, you have to be there when people are searching. So if you are a one-trick pony right now, you need to consider other channels. Again, if you're on Google, great. If you're competitive there, fantastic. Now, where else can you be competitive? Are you on Microsoft Ads? No. Is your neighbor there? Yes. Okay, that's a problem. You need to be there. 2, be upfront with your value proposition. Again, going back to seeing audiences, making sure that you can provide an option for them, right? One size does not fit all. So what is your value proposition? Can you buy online and pick up? Can you do a scheduled component where you have people come in and test out your product, look at your product? Can they have a consultation with you? Are things timed? Can you allow them to be more catered in that experience, right? Think about that, right? Invest where your competition isn't. Again, this goes back to number 1. If your competition isn't there, that's a huge opportunity for you to eat their lunch. Number 4, look at each network's return on investment. So as we're continuing to see more places for you to be visible, again, connected TV, there's going to be the search component, there's going to be billboards, there's offline, there's online. Is everything making sense for you? And do you have all the different unique identifiers that allow you to track back a purchase so that it shows you, hey, like this is what drove all this revenue. Can I allocate this to each channel, and which one is doing the most for me, and how do I do more of that? And maybe how do I dial down or retool the one that probably isn't delivering the most return on investment? So I think if you're managing that yourself, I think this is a great time to have a conversation with each publisher to help you understand how you synthesize and make sense of all that. If you're working with an agency, it's a good opportunity for you to challenge them to show you what's under the hood. And again, if you're interested in more of this, there's a lot of information out online, and you can start doing your research there to really like help understand what you're looking at. And then lastly, number 5, raise your hand on new ad format, right? If you're doing all these things already, great. Now it's an opportunity for you to push your publisher, push your agency, push the folks on the side that are providing you this visibility to do more. How else can you show up a little differently? And if there's an opportunity for you to participate in a group that allows you to voice your experience and say, I want to be visible uniquely here. How do you make that happen? You should do that. Challenge them. And again, let your voice be heard in that respect, because the difference a lot of times is a combination of one or two or all 5 of these components, but you want to make sure you have this in consideration as you start moving forward with your digital ad presence, as you increase your digital ad presence, and as you stay competitive and successful in the coming year and the next few years. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate the time. And with that, I will leave you here and look forward to seeing you and speaking with you on the next webinar. Thank you.